Good evening, America, and good afternoon, Australia. Welcome back to Radio Toni. This is the Everyday Business Show, and I'm your host, Toni Lontis. Just a reminder for those of you listening live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, we have the gorgeous Payo listening in the Philippines, ready to answer your questions, comments, and send you links to the information that we're talking about today. Just a reminder that the replays of the show appear on our own TV app, Toni TV, on Binge Network USA, and also across all LG, Roku, Samsung smart TVs across the world. Just look for Toni TV, the channel. Now, we have a particularly special guest today, and I'm really grateful he agreed to appear live on the show today because we're talking about a difficult subject. For those of you that are listening, just a reminder, if we talk about things that trigger you in any way, please reach out and seek help. And make sure that you talk to someone about something that might upset you. But we're going to have a frank, open, and honest conversation with our amazing guest today. Adm Armstrong is a recovered addict. He is now 5 years clean and sober, and he's on a mission to talk about addiction and recovery. In 2019, Adm created If I Motivation on YouTube as he identified a lack of resources available to help people struggling with addiction in southwestern Florida. Adm knew that the same things he struggled with would be some of the things that other people grappled and struggled with too, and he knew he could help. Unfortunately, 10 weeks after he created the YouTube channel, his best mate, Robbie, passed away from a fentanyl overdose, and it occurred on the day before Adm's 3-year clean and sober mark. So it's become his mission to reach as many struggling addicts as he can with his own channel. Adm, I'm so grateful to have you on the show today. Welcome. Thank you for being with us. I know it's late at night for you over on the west coast of America, and I'm on the east coast of Australia, so we're about as far away from each other as you could possibly imagine. But that's okay. We're
That's all
here
right.
together today, and we're going to talk about addiction and recovery. Welcome to the show, Adm.
Glad to be here. It's an honor and a privilege, Toni. Thank you for doing this with me. It's just an honor. I'm glad to be here.
I think that it's really brave and courageous to talk about something that is so immensely personal, so filled with shame and guilt. So I thought today that I'd start right at the beginning. And
Let's
if
do
you're
it.
comfortable talking about how your addiction started and how you got caught up in this lifestyle.
Yeah, so it actually started excessively young. So my mother abandoned me at 2 years old and left me at what we have as a Salvation Army during the middle of the 80s during the crack epidemic.
Yeah,
So then I went to live
yeah.
with my grandma, and I stayed with my grandma for a number of years. And believe it or not, my addiction actually started as a very, very young teenager. It started off with basically stealing cigarettes from grandma because I just seen it and I thought,
Yeah.
well, they're doing it. Why can't I do it? Then it led to alcohol, drugs, ecstasy and cocaine primarily in my late teens and into the 20s. And then Florida, as well as the United States, has a massive opioid epidemic right now. So it went from that to
Yeah.
prescription pharmaceuticals, and then eventually being an IV heroin user.
Wow, Adm. So I'm guessing that at those early years, it didn't occur to you that it would develop into such a life-encompassing addiction. I'm guessing that there wasn't a lot of education that would allow you to understand, hey, I'm progressing into dangerous territory. And the other fact that we need to remind our listeners of is that young men in particular, their brains don't develop until they're at least 25. So if you're
Yes.
messing around with drugs at such an early age, there's no capacity for you to understand or conceptualize what you're getting yourself into. Adm, I'm assuming, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that start of addiction was a numbing for you, numbing the pain that you felt about your rejection from mum and what was happening in and around your life. Is that true?
Toni, that's so very true. I was faced with basically PTSD, and I was suffering from abandonment
Yeah.
issues because I would always go to my other side of the family and I would be like, well, why and why, just being curious as an adolescent.
Uh-huh.
And there was never really exacts. Everybody tried to like shuffle the things under the rug, as we would say, and we'll just talk about it later. We'll just deal with it later. And then it definitely was a numbing situation, whether it be ecstasy at 16 years old, staying up all night, or cocaine well before 18, and just everything. It was basically my way to escape because there really wasn't a set example on how to deal with your issues. I come from an Italian family, and they're a little bit more on the hush hush side, the family name. And so we never really talked about anything. We just basically bottled it all in. And the volatility within inside me led to my own demise.
Yeah. Adam, in your learning and education, because obviously you've done a huge amount of work on yourself,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's your experience that often addiction comes from a traumatic space. Does it? I know that there's a genetic component, so that you were actually predisposed to some sort of addiction by virtue of the fact that your mum was an addict. Is that still true? Am I up to date with my research on addiction?
Toni, I've done ample amounts of due diligence regarding this matter. And, I firmly believe it could actually go both ways. So when I was in a treatment facility for like the sixth time, because I could never get detox and rehab right, I actually brought that exact question to one of the counselors. And I was like, my mom's an addict. My dad's an addict. Am I destined to be an addict? And it's a
Yeah,
fine line. Is there genetic
yeah.
predisposition? I firmly believe there is, right?
Mm.
But it's also one own's path. It's education, it's perseverance, it's strength and hope and courage. It's the possessing and retention of attributes and characteristics that it takes to succeed.
Yeah, yeah. Adam, in your journey from addiction to recovery, what do you think was the lowest point for you? And what did it take for you to go, oh my God, I'm an addict? Like, what did it take?
Well, it took a couple different things. I know most people probably don't come on the show and do show and tell, but I got a couple photos right here on the floor.
Oh, good. We love that.
This was me. That was me. I was a hardened criminal. I was a thug. I was a convicted felon. I was out there trafficking narcotics. I got one more photo. This was me.
Um, Adam.
So basically what happened is I ended up catching a heroin charge. I was in, narcotic sales and distribution and everything else, trying to get a small percentage so that I was getting high. I thought I was doing big things, and I was just a functioning addict, taking advantage of my friends and their addiction. But what my saving grace was, Toni, it sounds really weird when I tell this to people, incarceration. I was on the
Yeah.
way to go. I was on the way to go get my hair braided, and we got pulled
It's a
over.
nice braid.
Thanks. Everybody says that on social.
Yes, it's good.
I got pulled over, and I was so under the influence of the heroin that I had just injected that I actually left the syringe, the needle on the floor. And then there was 4 bags of heroin total. I swallowed the empty bags instead of the full bags. So the law
Oh,
enforcement officer seen the paraphernalia, the syringe, the needle
yes,
on the
yes,
floorboard. That was probable cause to rip me out of the car, search the vehicle. I was riding passenger, we call it shotgun. I was riding passenger
yeah.
seat, and they basically got me. So they charged me with possession of heroin, That was that other picture with my long hair, with my hair pulled out.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
March 11th, 2016, and I have not looked back. It's been 5 years and
Yeah.
just over 3 months, I believe.
Yeah. Well done, you. Now, listen, I'm figuring that being an addict and being incarcerated is not a great place to be and not a great place to start your recovery, I would suggest.
Yeah, so, reflecting back now, Toni, I wouldn't have changed it for the world.
Yeah.
The magic cure all in that specific county, Lee County, Florida, in southwestern Florida here in the US, the magic cure all is water. You're detoxing off heroin and you're shaking, you got acute withdrawal symptoms, drink water. Can't use the restroom, drink water. There's no services rendered. It's just it's a tough luck, stuck like Chuck kind of situation. And it was misery, but I needed that cage rattling. I needed something or
Yeah.
someone or something to rattle me
Yeah.
as hard as I could, because I had one foot in death's door. Like, I was
Yeah.
one foot in the grave, as we say, and if I wouldn't have
Yeah.
caught that heroin charge and went through such a traumatic, miserable experience, I probably wouldn't have had the success that I have today. So as weird as it sounds, Toni, I sort of kind of owe my life to the Lee County Sheriff's Department in Fort Myers, Florida,
Yeah.
because I was
Yeah.
a functioning heroin addict at that time. I got arrested. They gave me a bond astronomically high. I was living my
Yeah.
life in $20 increments. I couldn't come up with 10% on $10,000. There was no way. So I
Oh,
had to sit. I got on the phone. I called everybody I could possibly think of. Help, help, come get me, come save me, which is what typical addicts do. I don't feel good, come save
yes.
me. And you know
Yes.
who came? Nobody, because the people that loved me wanted me to stay there. And the people that didn't were doing the same thing out there in them streets, expecting a different result.
Yeah. Yeah. Adam, I want to ask you a bit more about that recovery, but before I do, I'd like to know from your perspective some of the key attributes of an addict. For those that are listening today, I want to know quite clearly what you can look for, some of the things that you can look for that addicts might display, because we know that research would suggest that there are hundreds of thousands of very high functioning adults slash alcoholics out there. So what's some of the things that people can look for?
So, like some characteristics and attributes of currently functioning addicts is, for me, and I'm just speaking on my
Yes.
experiences. It's not a step
Yes.
by step program. I'm not a doctor, and this isn't medical advice.
Yes.
Some of the things is it's the ability to accept one's fault. Like, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's your fault. It's their fault. It's the world's holding me down. My boss is holding me down. The inability to compromise with
Yeah.
yourself or others, because we're very like self-seeking. We're very self-centered in our addiction. So it's me,
Yes.
me, me, I, and now. So it's like, and I've been through all the stages, I come from
Yeah.
an HVAC background. I make very, very good money. So I've been the functioning addict. I've been the homeless addict. I've been the everything addict. But like,
Yeah.
oh man, like for the opiates consistently, very sleepy, or if you're on like methamphetamine or uppers, it would be not
Yeah.
sleeping. It would be insomnia,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
basically, and then just lying, stealing, manipulating, all
Yeah.
the other things that I just used to do. Like, I'm looking back at the things I used to do to people, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, I was not me, like I tried to
Yeah.
restore all the relationships, and not everyone gets restored because of the decision making skills I
Yeah.
possessed. But just to answer your question, it's all about the person. They're
Yeah.
very limited on compromising situations. And then they're eager to seek out the next fix. Like, instead of
Yeah.
going to Christmas with grandma, it's I'm gonna be late because of whatever reason. And it's the acquisition and apprehension of the narcotics. So their time's
That
wrapped up
consumes
in
their life.
acquisition, and it's
Yeah.
it's basically doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, a
Yeah.
hamster wheel of sorts
Yeah.
of insane
Yeah.
tendencies.
So I want to take you back to that time when you're incarcerated. And
Uh-huh.
if you're comfortable, Adam, talking us through all of those things that you went through in that environment. And let's just say from the get-go that it's one of the toughest environments to try and survive in anyway, without trying to beat an addiction. So
Sure.
can you tell the audience a little bit about some of that time in there, if that's
That
okay?
No, perfectly. I'm an open book. You ask me anything you want to. So I
Thank
basically,
you.
yeah, no worries. I spent the first couple days downtown before they moved me to the main facility. Then once you arrive to the main facility, they put me in a dorm. I was in dorm room number 13. And the population in your
Mm-hmm.
typical dorm is probably sitting about 70 or 80 men. And it was like man, it almost reminded me of like a prehistoric land, like watching a movie where
Oh,
dinosaurs were roaming. Because it was just, I was still coming off the drugs because it took,
yes,
50 days to get out of my system. And I'm just looking
yes,
around and I'm like smacking myself. I'm like, is this really happening? Is this a dream? Am I dreaming that this is happening?
yes.
And then, the insomnia for me. So the first night, this sounds really weird, but the restrooms have excessively amount of flushing power. So when they flush the toilets, it's like whoosh, and then we're all in flip flops. So everybody's click, 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 whoosh, click, 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 whoosh. Sounds like Granny on her typewriter
Um,
and a jet taking
yes,
off. So it
yeah,
was very brutal. I also came in there under indigent status, which is basically you're broke and you don't got no money because you decided to spend it all on drugs before the police caught you. So I wasn't provided anything. I didn't have any candy, which I learned later that your sugar levels are excessively inadequate
yes,
up and down when you're detoxing,
yes,
both from alcohol
yes,
and drugs. A little bit of sugar goes a
yes,
long way. I remember
yes,
one of my bunkies, like he was the next bunk over because it's a bunk bed and I was on top. He was the gentleman to the
yes,
left of me. I'd be flopping and I was averaging, I remember writing myself a bunch of letters, right? Because they said journal to yourself. And then you go back and read it when you're
yes,
having a bad day and you reflect and your day's
yes,
not that bad compared to where you came from. So I'm
yes.
journaling. I'm like 1.5 hours of sleep today, 2.5 hours of
Oh,
sleep today. I think by day 4 or 5, I might have
yes,
accumulated 8 hours total. So I'm on the top of the bunk. I'm flopping like a fish. I'm twitching. All the basically the withdrawal symptoms
yes.
were associated with Mexican
Which
tar
are
heroin.
horrible.
Absolutely. And then the cops, the correctional officers are like, drink water, drink water. But my bunkie gave me a piece of candy and I'll never forget it. I let the piece of candy just sit in my tongue and I fell asleep for like 4 hours. My blood sugars had
Oh,
regulated.
yay.
I didn't have goosebumps, chills, and it was able to subside. And then by like day 4 or 5, the realization that the drugs were starting to wear off, but the realization that I was
Mm-hmm.
actually there and that I would
Yes.
actually screwed my life up, that I'm going to court on a possession of a heroin charge, that I'm ruined my life. I had liquidated every asset. I have burned every bridge. I
Yes.
blew up every bridge that I couldn't burn. I literally
Yes.
diminished myself to nothing. Like I was a 31,
Yes.
at that time, I was a 31-year-old heroin addict
Yes.
incarcerated in jail. And I said, what am I going to do? Like, what do I do? So they had
Yes.
a couple meetings there. So in Florida, it's pretty much the anonymous program, the 12-step program. They don't really go outside of that a whole lot. It's available, but just not in incarceration standards. So I went to a
Yeah.
couple meetings and I just started like reading, whether that be specific religious
Yes.
books or informational books. And I
Yes.
just consistently gained knowledge. Like I wanted to realize, how did I screw myself up and what can I do to not screw
Yes.
myself up again? So I just went to a bunch of meetings. Then I finally got offered to get moved out from medium security to low security. So we went out to the
Oh,
tents.
wow.
At that
Yes.
point in time, I went into the tents. A business partner of mine, we hadn't formed the business yet. We formed it after sobriety, but somebody I've known
Yes.
for 25 years, I walk in there and he's in there. He's in there on 10 counts of prescription fraud. Then all of a
Oh, my
sudden,
goodness.
my brother Robbie that passed away, he has a dirty urine analysis for
Yes.
probation for testing positive on cocaine. So like a week later, he's in there with me. So we're in the same tent now, low security
Oh,
incarceration. I got a business partner to be, somebody I went to kindergarten with, so we've known each other 20 plus
Yeah.
years, and my brother walks in there. And, you know, so it helped when other people got in there. We were just hanging
Yeah.
out. We were talking about how we needed to fix ourselves. And then I just got an offer from the public defender's office, and they gave me the option. You can either lay for one more week, lay down for another week. They were going to give me 90 days. Credit for time served would have been 75. I was going to serve 69 already. So I had about a week left, give or take. Or they offered me all these contingencies. They offered me probation and classes and fines and court costs and see the judge and pee in the cup. And like the list went on and on and on and on and on. And there was no doubt in my mind. I needed the probation. I needed the contingencies. I needed the classes. I needed the structure. That's where we fail a lot of situations here in the States is nobody structures themselves for success. Nobody structures themselves for preventative measure. The lack of structure is something that really spoke out to me, especially after 60 days. You know, and one thing that really spooked me out, Toni, is so you dress in when you're incarcerated, then you dress out when you get released. So I dressed in, I was under the influence, had no idea. But then I dressed out 69 days later and I seen what I got incarcerated in. My my clothes are full of holes. I got blood stains running down one of my legs because I used to hit it here with a needle and here with the needle. So I would wipe on my pant leg. So I got a blood stain all down this left pant leg, dots of blood everywhere. I was taking my underwear garment and I was biting a piece of the cotton off to filter the heroin through the dirty spoon with. So I got underwear with holes in it, stinking. I got clothes full of blood stains from injecting IV injecting heroin, and it just stunk. Like it was like so mind blowing, you know. And then I also, one thing on the way out is I got tested for sexually transmitted diseases, things that you can catch basically intravenously. They gave me an option. Do you want to get your report right now and sit in jail and who knows what, or do you want to get it the day you get out? And I was like so still in my feelings about what had happened that I wanted to get it the day I got out. So I put on all my nasty clothes. The very last thing the cop does, the correctional officer does, he hands me the report, the envelope, and he says, "All right, kid, we'll see you next time." And I'm like, next time? I'm never coming back to this place. I open up the envelope, and by the grace of something bigger than us, I had not caught any diseases from the use of
That was one of
sharing
my
needles.
other questions. Is inherent in addiction are the other plethora of things that can happen to your body because of your addiction, and so you got out of that relatively unscathed. One question before we move on,
Sure.
Adam, how scary is it in jail?
I'm gonna be real with you, Toni. It wasn't too bad. I'm 6'4", 240 pounds, so I move around okay. At that time, I was down to about 200 because we clearly put a little bit of healthy weight on when we get in active recovery. I had come from the streets. You know, this was me before I walked in there. So
you were okay.
It wasn't too bad. I already thought I was a gangster. I already thought I was a hood rat. I already thought I was the man with the master plan. So for me personally, in between my height and weight and then the streets that I had just transpired from, it wasn't too horrible. I seen a couple people get maced in a closed vicinity, so we're breathing in mace, and I've got 1.5 lungs. I got stabbed in April of 2000 fighting over drugs, so I had a little bit of respiratory issues, but other than that, it wasn't too bad, Toni.
Cool. So you get out of jail, you're partway to a good start to recovery, and then what happened next? What was the thing that happened next? Because I want to talk about Robbie's passing, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I can lead up to that if you want. So basically I got out. So I was released immediately after that court date. They gave me the week or all the contingencies and we'll let you go right now. Well, not right now, but that day. So they let me go that day. I was in a relationship, a codependent relationship with a female at the time, and she was in
Yeah.
charge of coming to get me. So my non-biological mother, Susan, which basically raised me, I love you, Mama, if you
Yeah.
see this. So she borrowed my mom's van. Mom was out of town.
Yes.
She picked me up, and she
Yeah.
was under the influence of speed because she was just looking like I used to
No.
look. And then I get home and I look at what happened. I look what I diminished. I looked at my life, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
Everybody was gone. It was just me. I open up the freezer and there's a 1 liter bottle of vodka right there. And
Ah.
that set me off right there. I had two decisions. I could
Yes.
walk away and continue on my journey that's going to be tough and challenging and sometimes overwhelming,
Yeah.
or I can take a sip of that vodka and go right back to what I just came from. So I called my uncle the next day and told him to come get it.
Uh-huh.
And that was the end of it. So I just kept working a program. I kept going to 12-step meetings. I kept going to other meetings, reaching out to excessively limited resources in Southwest Florida. And
Yeah.
my other buddy got out. We turned it into a business. We started a tree trimming landscaping business that went really well. Robbie had
Yeah.
been released, and Robbie was doing okay, but I always tried to get Robbie to a meeting. I always tried to get Robbie to talk about his problems. I always got,
Uh-huh.
I was excessively open, just like how I am with you today. If
Yes.
somebody, or if I was dealing with something, like the whole world knew about it, kind of thing, because I was wearing it
Yeah.
so heavy. But Robbie
Yeah.
bottled all that stuff up. Like, he didn't really talk about his feelings. He didn't really talk about things that made him hurt or uncomfortable, or he did, but it was just
Yeah.
few and far between. Like, I went in abundance to work a program of recovery, and he basically didn't work much of a program of recovery at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really quite difficult for some men to talk at that level, isn't it? It's hard for them to admit addiction, failure. Men die without talking about their issues. And that kind of leads me into the whole stigma of addiction and why we don't, as humanity, talk about it. But particularly for men, it's hard for you guys to talk about these things, isn't it?
Yeah. So I come from an air conditioning sales background, so I've always been very good in vocabulary and expressing the
Yeah.
ability to communicate and delegate and negotiate and the things that are attached to that. But on a general premise, yes, us men, us boys, we can be exceptionally stubborn. We can be exceptionally thick-headed. We can think that we can carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, that we don't need
Yeah.
marriage counseling, grieving counseling. We don't even need to talk to nobody. We'll just talk to ourselves at nighttime.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
and I firmly believe men are excessively ego driven. So it's somewhere between pride and ego that gets us in the
Yeah.
way. I go and I speak
Yeah.
to men all the time, and when I talk about my brother, I talk about something that's bothering me. I never cried when
Yeah.
I was this guy. I never shedded a tear,
Yeah.
right? And now
Absolutely.
5 years and something months later, if I get a soft spot in my heart, I'm
Yeah.
quick to show my emotions. And we need to shatter that stigma. It's okay for men to show emotions.
Absolutely.
There's a point and a place and a time for us to be tough and rough, and there's a point and a place
Mm.
and a time for us to be open and effective in the art of communication as well, whether that be
Yeah.
expressing our feelings, expressing something that's wrong with us. Basically, if you bottle all that up, it's going to cause
Yeah.
volatility within you. Then the next person that comes by with something that you maybe might don't want to hear, it can lead to
Yeah.
an eruption, because us guys like to get
Yeah.
mad about the situation. It's like, oh, like we try to get frustrated in order to extinguish the current circumstance or situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, how difficult was it for you after Robbie passed? And just for the listeners, Robbie died of a fentanyl overdose, Adam.
Yeah, so it was the day before my 3 year. It was March 10th, 2019. We were expected to have a good time and celebrate Adam's milestone per se. you know, and I knew
Yeah.
Robbie had fell off. I seen Robbie at like a Christmas party in December, prior to this event. And I clearly could tell he had fell off. He was messing with the wrong people, the wrong places,
Yeah.
doing the wrong things. But I'll never forget it. You know, it was daylight savings time. The clock had sprung forward, and I get a text message at like 3 a.m. from my
Yeah.
mom, and it says Robbie's
Oh,
dead. And the first step's denial, just like I don't have a problem. I don't need to go to rehab. I don't need to talk to a counselor. Denial, right? I was in denial. So I look at the phone. And the only thing I could think to do was text my mother back, Robbie who? Like, that's all I had in that moment was Robbie who? Like, I know you're not talking about my Robbie or our Robbie or the Robbie. Robbie who, Mom?
yeah.
Robbie who?
Yeah.
And she texted me back, Robbie, your brother. So I had to hop in the car. I was about, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes from the location that he got a hold of the fentanyl. So he got a hold of fentanyl that was actually cut with some type of thinner. And he actually had a brain aneurysm as well. So he was bleeding out of orifices while overdosing. This was the information provided from the people inside the drug house. We call it a trap house in Florida. Inside the drug den, a couple of the people that I knew from jail and previous hair braids had told me that, you know, basically he got a hold of some really bad stuff and that he actually overdosed and bled out. So the coroner, it's 4 or 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. The sun's just about to break. They're like, do you want to go see him? And I'm like, what? No, I don't want to go see him. I'll remember him how I choose to remember him. I got enough trauma in my life. I got enough nightmares in my life. I'm not walking in there and seeing my brother in a pool of whatever, wherever. So yeah, instead of a day of celebration, it was a day in the shower crying. It was a day contemplating like why would God do something like this? Why would my higher power, the universe, whatever you aren't into, that's cool, right? But why would this happen? Why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to Robbie? Like, you know, and it's somewhere around acceptance, right? Like I didn't want to accept that had happened. But I needed to accept at that exact moment that could have been me, right? It should have been me. I was on the needle way longer. I had shot dope way more times. I remember the first time Robbie got injected, it was because of me. He's like, hey man, I see that. Let me try that. Cause he was smoking it, sniffing it. I'm the one that showed Robbie the needle, you know, and now he's dead with a fentanyl overdose. And my mom's freaking out and the whole block's lit up with red and blue lights and the coroner's asking me if I want to go see him. And it was like, you know how I told you I walked in jail and it was like, where am I? Right? That was the same feeling. Like, what's going on? Where am I? Is this really happening? Is this really happening, Adam? And it was. And Robbie was dead. He actually, after Robbie died, I stopped counting people. Robbie was number 36 from the old circle, the old neighborhood, the old crew, all the old heroin shooters and crack smokers. Robbie was the 36th death from our circle.
Pretty bad stats. So just a question, Adam.
Sure.
So I'm a nurse, a theatre nurse. Fentanyl is something that we use to put people off to sleep and give pain relief. It's very fast acting. And the thought of someone knowingly injecting that outside of a medical setting is quite horrific for me. How prevalent is a drug like fentanyl? How accessible is it easy to get where Robbie was it, and is it cheap? Is that why?
Yeah, so basically what was happening in the Southwest Florida area is the price on a kilo of heroin had soared. And we could order, people could order through the black market fentanyl at a much cheaper price. So then they could take horrible quality heroin. They could take just on the verge of not even drugs, right? They could cut it with artificial sweeteners like mannitol and inositol, all the additives. and put heroin or put fentanyl to it. So we think we're buying heroin. That's what happened is Robbie bought a $20 bag of heroin that was laced with fentanyl.
And that's
Nobody in Florida is just going to buy some fentanyl. Now, back long ago, before the heroin existed, did they make the fentanyl patches that you could stick on your arm or the,
yes.
I've even seen people cut the gel out and eat the gel or chew on the, that's what it was. But it was introduced in our neighborhood as a excessively profitable, in talking in margins, excessively profitable business venture. And the byproduct was the loss of lives. So the connects, the drug dealers, the drug lords, the kingpins, everybody was just sending the fentanyl down here, and they would take 2 or 3 kilograms of poor quality heroin, and they'd sprinkle some fentanyl on it, mix it up, and just pray they don't kill nobody.
Wow. Adam, from my questions around legalization of illegal drugs, and I've often wondered, thinking about addicts and recovering. I actually, if you're addicted to something, my nursing brain says that you will be better placed in a house that has access or a facility or a building or a shed that has access to water and showers, and to legalize some of those drugs that takes away the nasty element. So if you're going to be addicted, at least you're getting something. Like, what are your thoughts on that? I know it's a bit controversial and perhaps people will shout me down, but I value human life, and I actually think if you have an addiction, and I would rather you to have a safe injection, and if you're going to shoot heroin, I would rather you shoot the stuff that's reasonable and not cut with thinners and going to help you bleed. Like, what a horrible thing to do to an addict. They're a human being first and foremost. There's something that's triggered them into that addiction, and we should care for them as if they have a chronic illness. And if we took away the element of illegal that's what you've been through. So you've been an addict, you've done the recovery. Is that something that would help?
Oh man, like you said, Toni, I mean, that's excessively controversial. That's a double-edged sword. That's a rock in a hard place. That's a catch-22, whatever adjective you want to smear on this one. I don't know. See, in Georgia, they do it a lot different here too. They have what they call assisted treatment. So like if you want to do methadone, or you want to like a needle exchange, or bring your old dirty stuff to us and we'll give you new clean stuff to work with. I haven't really done a lot of data on the back end for success rates. I know somewhere in Europe, it's I want to say Denmark, I believe, or Switzerland, somewhere.
They do things,
very effective.
Pretty good over there.
Very, very effective with exceptional numbers. Man, it's such a hard one though, because like if they recreationalize drugs and they let me get a free needle and they gave me a free spoon,
is that going to put you back into?
It would have left me where I was, and I get it, because my wife, also is in the recovery movement. She's got almost 6 years coming up on the 28th. And, it's more of like an open door. Like I asked her, I'm like, why do they give people needles and crack stems and stuff like this? Right. Like, it's just weird to me normally, because I come from Florida, and that's
they
not
don't
right.
want to.
Yeah.
They don't want people, the compounding effects of addiction, so that the hepatitis and all the other things, they're trying to decrease the impact on the health system, and with the hope that they will get you out of addiction and into recovery before you completely F up your life effectively.
Right. They chalk it up to almost like the handing out of condoms for protection
Yeah.
purpose. It's more of a protective purpose while
Yeah.
still leaving the door open in the communication on a common plateau, so that when somebody's truly sick of what they're doing, they're not
Yeah.
scared to talk to somebody. Because when you're ready to go to
Yeah.
rehab, nobody wants to go. Like, I mean, I tried to
Yeah.
kill myself, and I ended up getting Baker acted and strapped to a 4-point chair years before this
Oh.
happened. And I didn't want to go. I wanted to go get $20 more. I'll go to rehab only if you buy me a bag of heroin. Like, what, Adam? Like,
Yeah.
seriously? So
So
do I
it
think
was the terrible catalyst of incarceration that finally got you seeing the truth of the situation and got you acting. To briefly touch on, because I want to ask you about your wife soon. I want to talk about the mindset that you need to get through recovery.
an open mindset? One of the best sayings I ever heard is, only until you start changing the things inside you and around you will the things inside you and around you begin to change. I'm going to say it one more time.
Yeah.
Only until you change the things inside of you and around you will
Yes.
the things inside of and around you begin to change.
Yeah.
It takes so much mental toughness. It took crying in the
Sure
shower.
does.
It took, I mean, just rage, and just like, I refer it to as a skeleton in the closet, right? You have to, at some point,
Yeah.
you've got to open that door, and let
And
some of those
start.
skeletons out, and you got to deal
Yep.
with things. And it's life on
Yes.
life's terms, and it's feelings and emotions, and it's a brutal, it can be scary, but
Yeah.
man, once you make it to the top of that mountain, it's a really nice view on the
It's good.
ability to overcome.
And we mustn't underestimate the work that goes into recovery, because those little voices in your head, they don't stop just because you've got to a certain spot in recovery. They don't stop when you get to 3 years clean and sober. They
Ever.
don't stop when you get
Ever.
to 6 years clean and sober. So you have to develop that mental toughness. But that's part and parcel of that healing and recovery journey, isn't it, Adam? That if you get the right help and support, you'll be able to do those things. You don't have to do them right at the beginning of starting recovery, but you will gain those things the further along you get. I know that you want to talk about your gorgeous wife. So when did she come into your life?
Oh, so, we're scheduled to get married October 10th, and she came into my life last summer. So the epidemic had hit the States. Everybody got locked down, put your mask on, hide in your house. That's a different video for a different day. And then, so that's how we met. She actually, we were following each other on social media. I had seen that she had a hashtag Georgia Recovers, and I'm like, well, that's cool, because I'm in Florida and I'm in recovery. So if Florida recovers and Georgia recovers, that's cool. I'm gonna send her a friend request. And then we just conversated back and forth. I was consistently pumping my YouTube content. She stumbled upon it. And without even knowing, she created her own channel, because during the everybody sit at your home with your mask on time, she lost her business temporarily. She lost herself. Like, she went from 60-hour work week every single day, takes a month or two to get on your books. You know about that, Toni, to absolutely just sitting there doing absolutely nothing. So she started her own YouTube channel, and I had already been following her. And then I seen she's pumping out YouTube videos, and I'm like, first and foremost, she's beautiful. And second, she's doing the same thing I'm doing. We got to talk about this. So I actually reached out to her. I said, hey, you're absolutely amazing doing what you're doing, Jamie. I would love to help you. And I don't know all the answers. Nobody knows all the answers, right? But I can at least explain to you the things that I've learned in my journey through the YouTube content creation on how we can do this together. So we were back and forth for a couple months. Everything was going good. And then I had never left my home state of Florida. you know? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I never rented a car. I never went on vacation. You didn't take vacations as a drug addict. The vacation was to cloud nine after you shoot
Yeah.
some dope, you know? So I'm
Yeah.
like, you know
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
I'm going to pack I'm going to get a rental car. I'm going to pack the car with my
A good
clothes. I'm
drive.
just going to drive. And I hit her up. I'm like, hey, you know, I'm going to see somebody else. So I did a 3-stop
Yeah.
tour. I hit
Yeah.
2 other YouTubers, and I came up
Yeah.
here last summer, and we just hit it off. And within a very short time, we were engaged, and I moved up here December 1st of 2019,
Yeah.
2020, last year, December
Yes.
1st.
Yes.
And here we are. You know, it's been
That's
amazing.
awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome. I always say this to people, there's lots of people on YouTube, there's lots of people on social media, but there's only one Adam, and there's only one Adam with a message, and there's people that only can hear Adam's message. So if
Right.
you deprive the world of Adam's message, you are not reaching the people that you have potential to help. I think that humans are unique. The messages and the stories that they have are unique. And if you can help 1 or 2 people to get through the struggle of life, then it's a good thing, isn't it?
Mission achieved. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's what your passion is now, isn't it, Adam? The creating of videos that specifically talk about recovery and addiction, and how, the things that you've learnt that helped you get through it. And in the absence of lots of other resources, this is something that people can jump onto your YouTube channel and have a look at. And, I've been on and looked at a lot of Adam's stuff and listened to a lot of Adam's stuff, and it's really good, people. It's really wonderful, um, passionate, authentic, heart-centered help, understanding, and education. So sometimes it's just the little things in addition to what you're doing that will help you get through the next thing. It might be something that you're specifically struggling with that you just can't figure out, what the hell, how do I get through this? If if you find someone that, or something, or some content that helps you, then that's changed the trajectory of your life. Because I'm guessing,
Absolutely.
Adam, that Robbie's loss drives your passion for this YouTube channel and your content forward. Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. You know, I had already aspired to be a content creator prior to the loss of my brother, but like that just
Yeah.
catapulted me. That was uh the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the instilling of, for real, like this is what needs to be
Yes.
done, you know. So one of the last things we did at Robbie's ceremony was we did a balloon release, right? And
Yeah.
I just wrote a note to Robbie, and it was between me and him.
Yeah.
And I've clearly held up my end of the deal, and I firmly
Yeah.
believe Robbie's assisting in the
Yeah.
acquisition and retention of the rest of the deal.
Yeah.
It was just one of them things, like I just had to accept it. I didn't want to. I had to
No.
accept it, and it was tough. But yeah, it's what drives my passion. I mean, I do air conditioning for a living. I'm in a very excessively
Yes.
lucrative position. I don't have to do anything. I could just go to home and sit there, but that's not what drives me. What drives me is
Yeah.
helping the Robbie before Robbie dies,
Yes.
helping the Adam
Yes.
before he's incarcerated on a heroin charge.
Incarcerated.
In the
Mm.
in the content creation, I'm just excessively real, raw, and excessively transparent in my
Agreed.
content. Some people don't like it because they want to be told what they want to hear, and that's okay too. That everybody's entitled to
Yeah.
their own decision making. But
Yeah.
like my videos, they just come from the heart, you know.
They do.
I utilize the hashtag this dude crazy, hashtag this dude crazy, because some people really think I am. They're like, did you just say that? did you just talk about that? And I'm like, yes, I did. Yes, I did. Because I firmly believe, when I lost my anonymity, like my wife always tells me, when we lose our anonymity to situations and circumstances, the chains of bondage have been broken, and that allows for
Yes.
freedom, both internally, externally, mentally, physically, emotionally, all the
Yeah.
leads in the book. And then it's just
Yeah.
progression from there. Is it an easy one-way path in recovery? Absolutely not. It's your path. And I just challenge
Yeah.
everybody that's watching this to go out there and take your path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing to remind everyone of is that when you shine the light on things that are difficult or difficult subjects, and you talk about those difficult subjects from a space of healing and authenticity, those things cease to have power over your life. So I absolutely believe that Adam talking about addiction and recovery each and every day, shining the light on what it looks like, what it feels like, and how it works in his life is a powerful thing for breaking those chains that addiction sometimes has around people's lives. It's a horrible thing. It has a massive economic, physical, spiritual impact on people's lives. And the more we openly talk about that and give people options and support and help, the less likely we're going to lose the Robbies in this world. Because every life, no matter what that life looks like, is precious. Everyone has innate um, potential to do something different. Every human being is unique. And I believe that every human being is placed on this planet for a reason, and it's finding that reason, as Adam has done through all of his journeys, all of his struggles, all of his addictions. Look what he has created on the other side of that. And I do believe that you and the gorgeous Jamie will create amazing things in the future. You're just young, you're just starting, but you've already got such a powerful message. Adam, thank you so much for being so vulnerable and courageous in talking about your story today. I like to remind people that appearing online is not always as easy as it looks, and that for some of us, myself included, we suffer from what Brene Brown calls a vulnerability hangover. And the more we speak, the better it gets. But for many of us, there will be times and days where you get off being live and authentic and go, oh my God, what have I done? What have I said? So I just want to show real appreciation for Adam and sharing your story today with my listeners live online. Adam, best wishes for the future. Quickly before we run out of time, what's one of your big things for 2021?
We formed a recovery coaching service. I would love to see that prevail. We're currently looking at potentially a non-for-profit to assist in the assistance of recovery needs and associated needs, revolving both around mental health and recovery.
Yeah,
Um, you know, for me, the prize is in the progress. The prize isn't the
yeah,
ultimate goal, because then I'm on to the next thing. So I will
yes,
continue to struggle and strive and pursue with passion. And that's the biggest thing for me, is just keep going one day at a time, one foot in front of the other. And like you said, if I save one life, mission achieved. And I firmly believe I've already done that. So when I take my last breath of this
absolutely.
thing we call life, I can say I did a good job.
Adm Armstrong, thank you so much for being on Radio Tony Everyday Business today. I really appreciate your time, and I'm very grateful that you agreed to be on the show. Wonderful listeners, if you want more about Adam, you'll find his links in the chat on the live channels, and you'll also find his information on all of the websites. So duck over to radiotony.com and you'll find how you can connect with Adam and watch Adam's space. For anyone who works in recovery or addiction or thinks you have, reach out and talk to Adam. He's an amazing, beautiful human being, and we're very lucky to have him on the show today. Adam, thanks very much. And that's all for us this week. We'll be back next week with another edition of Radio Toni Everyday Business. Bye for now. Thanks, Adam.
Bye.